Okay, and we are live. I want to
Okay.
thank everyone for tuning in for a special edition of Off the Record, the People's Podcast. This afternoon, we have an illustrious guest, Student Minister Jeffrey Muhammad. I want to thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to have a conversation with us, sir.
All praises be to Allah. It's my honor, my privilege, and humble that such an outstanding young man as yourself would even ask me to join such an illustrious circle.
Praise be to Allah. Okay, my first question is, Brother Jeffrey, when was the first time you heard the teachings of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad?
I would say around 1990. I was living in Fort Wayne, Indiana, and a young brother had a tape of the minister countdown to the year 2000. And I had never heard anybody speak with the intensity and the fearlessness of which he presented. I was nervous of it. I was a Christian, and at the time I was kind of happy being that, so I wasn't feeling his usage of the word Allah. I didn't understand when he said Master Farrakhan Muhammad and the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. I was white-minded then. I was a black-white boy, so I wasn't feeling any black messiah, none of that. I still loved with white hair. But I loved his message of blackness, but I wasn't ready or prepared yet for a black messiah and a black God. That messed me up. Everything else, I felt it, but I enjoyed it. But the first time I was scared of the serious black language of God. That made me nervous of him. But the message was something I had never heard of in my life.
Praise be to Allah. Okay, my sister Miriam sends the greetings. Sister Lovett says assalamu alaikum as well. Brother Jeffrey, why did you finally accept the teachings?
I kept listening to that tape over and over and over again. And everything made sense to me except the usage of a black God and a black Messiah. And I couldn't get past that. And I kept thinking I need to go one day to see him, to hear him preach. And I knew he was in Chicago, and I was in Fort Wayne. I'm trying to make this long story short.
Yes, sir.
One day my mother, she was living in Gary, became very ill, and I drove from Fort Wayne to Gary, which is maybe 2.5 hours away. She was in the hospital, and I felt she was getting better, so that night I went downtown Chicago to the Hard Rock Cafe to party. I think I was 24. And I came home like 3 in the morning, and my father was standing at the door, and I'm thinking, I know he's not about to go off. I'm a grown man. So he's standing in the doorway, and when I get to the door, he said, "Your mother passed." So I drove my car around like in a stupor from 3-ish, 4-ish to maybe 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock. And I don't know how it happened, but I ended up at Mas Mariam parking lot. And Brother E.T. Sultan, he knocked on my window. I'm in my car crying, and he said, "Come inside, the minister's speaking." And I'm not familiar with the language, the minister.
Yes, sir.
So I said, okay. And I'm sitting in the first seat on the first row, and it's the minister speaking on women, and it's Mother's Day. And he's speaking on how we need to say we love our mothers more and thank them and be kind to them. And my mother had just passed. And I'm sitting just crying, but his exegesis on women and how we mistreat women and the special relationship that God has and his love of women won me over, and I got up and I accepted Islam on the day that my mother passed. And it was Islam that got me through at that time, the roughest year of my life trying to cope with the loss of my mother, who was my best friend. But it was Islam, and I was able to pour my pain into the work in Islam.
Praise be to Allah. That's a beautiful story. And thank you for your transparency, Brother Minister. And thank you all for watching. My sister Naima says, Assalamu alaikum. Brother Jimmy Davis says, Walaikum salam. Sister Sherry says, Assalamu alaikum, alaikum salam, ma'am, to you as well.
Alaikum salam for everybody.
Yes, sir.
Especially your family, bro. I just want those that are listening that the sacrifice of your mother and you as children, I was blessed to see you all as young children. And I taught your sister Miriam, we called her Mimi then.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We still calling that now.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
And I used to always pray for you all because out of most of the children, other than the minister's family, you all grew up without your father.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Because no matter where in the world the minister went, your father was there. And y'all didn't get a chance to grow up with your dad the way y'all saw everybody else at Mas Mariam grow up.
Yes, sir.
But y'all's love for him and y'all's love for the nation has always impressed me because I know that you all suffered growing up. You all had to try to live up to the big name of your father and your mother. So I just wanted to say, man, I'm proud of y'all as young'uns that y'all have stuck to it because y'all went through it as young Muslims. Y'all went through it, bro. Y'all got a story to tell one day.
Praise be to Allah. And thank you very much. And we want to say that we want to thank you and the sacrifice of your family and your children as well, sir. My sister Mimi says, all praise to Allah. Brother Jeffrey was her 6th grade teacher. So Naima says, praise to Allah. Sister Shantae, ASA family. Brother Sean, assalamu alaikum, brother. Oh, also, brother Minister, you were a member or are a member of Omega Psi Phi. What made you, is that correct? Yes, sir. What made you choose that fraternity?
Whew. Back in college, coming out of high school, I didn't know anything about black fraternity.
Yes, sir.
And when I got to college, I went to Ball State University in Indiana. And I saw all the fraternities my first few weeks. I tried to figure out what differentiated one from the other. So I started thinking of, well, who were outstanding men that were in these organizations? There were giants in each of them, but it seemed that there were so many black men that I was familiar with that were members of Omega. And I played football. So at the time, it was like Ed Too Tall Jones. Michael Jordan was acute. Shaq ended up becoming acute. There were so many outstanding brothers that were Omegas that I felt like if they found something valuable in Omega Psi Phi, and I had a favorite poet at the time, his name was Langston Hughes.
Yes, sir.
And he is a member of Omega Psi Phi. And I felt if they found this to be valuable, then there must be something in it valuable for me. So I went down that road. Little did I know then that the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan had pledged Omega Psi Phi as well. So
yes,
I feel like I'm in the company.
Praise be to Allah. Excellent. Yes, sir. And thank you all for your comments. Sister Sherry says, great soldiers for Muhammad. Brother Martin says, excellent piece, brother. And Sister Shantae says her daughter is a BSU alum. Okay, my next question for you, sir, is when you came into the mosque, who was training you? Did you go straight into the ministry? Did you stay in Indiana? What was your journey like when you first came in?
When I first joined, I lived in Fort Wayne, and every Saturday, Sunday, Monday, I would drive to Chicago. Back then, we had your father had instilled some early morning Saturday workouts led by Brother Ron. We'd have to be there at 6 o'clock. Every Saturday morning, we do our physical workouts, then go clean the mosque, then go hit the papers with papers and then soldier. That was every Saturday. And, of course, Sunday, we had the 9 o'clock meetings then, and I'd stay for FOI class. And they challenged me in Chicago that if I were a real FOI, I would establish a base head in the city in which I was in. So I established, by the permission of Allah, a study group in Fort Wayne, Indiana, and began the ministry in there. We didn't have a formalized ministry, but as you know, if you can push the final call paper, you end up learning the scriptures real quick, because on the street, people challenge your faith. So from the Ahmadiyya Muslims to the Christians, you better know your stuff if you're going to push. So in my first 6 months of being at FOI, and I hate to admit this, but I was getting beat up bad on the street. They was beating my behind.
Yes, sir.
So I had to steal away for a couple of months to do some serious study, to come back out to show myself approved. And in that process, learning the scripture and how to defend the teachings, we were able to start attracting people to a study circle, and we finally built a little mosque in Fort Wayne, Indiana, and that's how I got into the ministry, doing the street battles on the street with the word. And many of the brothers remember the days. It was great pride in going out to the street battling. In the hours, using the scripture to battle Christians, to battle Jehovah's Witnesses, to battle other people, just to see if you could top them with the word. I don't know if we were winning recruits then, but we were sure winning battles with the word.
Yes, sir. And who was assisting you while you were in Indiana?
At the time, I was by myself, and then another young brother named Brother Mario, he joined, and then after a while, we ended up having maybe 20 to 30 people, and it was more of a community. It was more of a we than an I. So I might have taught more, but it really was a we. We were small, so we had to pay the bills. We cleaned the mosque. We took turns securing. We took turns teaching. So it really was a we more than it was an I.
Praise be to Allah. Okay, and thank you. I'm coming to you all's comments, and thank you all for watching the People's Podcast. Brother Minister, what was it like when you first met the Most Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan?
Wow. The first time I met him is when I accepted, and I shook his hand. And I felt like, and I didn't know of his divinity. I just felt he was a good minister.
Yes, sir.
But I felt an incredible amount of energy from him that I had never felt from another human being. And I knew it was something serious about him than anyone else I had ever met. First time I officially or formally met him, it was like he was glowing. And the way he looked at you, you could almost tell that he was inside of you, reading you in your head somewhere. I could almost feel him in my head going through my thoughts. And I was like, man, I was trying to close doors. Over there. Oh, no, not here. Not here. I thought I was listening to my mind. I'm like, no, he's in my head. I know I sound spooky to many people, but this is how I felt like. This man is reading my life, and I'm meeting him for the first time. But when I left, it felt like if I had never met God, that was as close as I was going to get. That's how.
Okay, excellent. Yes, sir. So once you were in Fort Wayne, Indiana, then how did you end up going to Chicago?
Well, I left Fort Wayne. Minister Ishmael transferred me from Fort Wayne to being the minister at Mosque number 74 in Indianapolis. I went there for 2.5 years, and then I came up to Chicago. He asked me if I would like to join the Muhammad University staff, and I said it would be an honor and a pleasure to come to Chicago and labor and to soldier. So that's how I ended up in Chicago.
Praise be to Allah. And once you became a part of the Muhammad University of Islam staff, what was your experience like there?
That's when I met your father, officially. And as you know, your father, I think your father's middle name is Work. Last name Work. First name Work. Work.
Yes, sir.
He elevated Islam to another perspective for me. So it was him. He was the captain at the time. He did local and national. Minister Ishmael was the minister. So between the two of them, I had two very powerful teachers and two great examples. Your father personalized Islam for me and many brothers. He took us definitely out of the sky and made us to know that wanting anything in life, we got to work for it.
Yes,
so
sir.
we became a very strong working FOI in Chicago. Minister Ishmael was extraordinarily strong spiritually. So for me, I had the best of both worlds, but I had never worked that hard. It was very exhausting working from both of them because they can go from can't see morning. And both of them are perfectionists. So
Yes, sir.
you're going to get it right with them, or you're going to do it again and again and again until you get it right. And in the process, you know, you might be upset, but as the scripture says, steel sharpens steel, men sharpen steel, men sharpen men.
Yes, sir.
Those two definitely are responsible for helping me to become an FOI and a Muslim. Both of those two great.
Praise be to Allah.
That was my first few years in Chicago, praying and working, pray and work. We worked and studied. We didn't have time for nothing else in Chicago but to build a nation, read, and go back to work, sleep, go back to work and build. We didn't have time for nothing else.
Allahu Akbar. Okay. Yes, sir. How was the Million Man March, and how did that impact you?
The lead up to it was very personal because the pitch to try to get men to go and to see men say yes. But then, you know, we didn't have the communication systems that we have now. So you really don't know who's coming. You have no idea what it's going to look like. And until you got there and seen this enormous amount of men, all in peace, all in harmony, that all of these brothers, from the hardest to the softest, from the brothers from the street to the brothers in the suites, every man cried when he saw his brother in peace. And we literally can say we saw a glimpse of heaven on that day because none of us had ever seen millions of black men, not one fight, no cursing, no bumping, no pushing, no anger. I don't think any of us had ever had an experience with just men and not one issue in one whole day. But I tell you, for me, the most dramatic part of the day is towards the end, and I believe Reverend Ben Chavis was speaking.
Okay.
The brothers started saying, Farrakhan, Farrakhan. And it can't be replicated, but to hear almost 2 million men yell Farrakhan, you felt the chill all the way to your toes.
Yes,
with
sir.
2 million men screaming Farrakhan at the top of their lungs. And I just cried as they got louder. I mean, I cried and I cried. I was like, oh, my God. And I saw the minister as he was coming down the stairs. And I said, you know what? The minister is much more important to God than I ever thought. He just took on a whole nother level when I heard these men calling his name. He became next to God for me. If he hadn't been there, I would have considered him God if I had not been taught right.
Praise be to Allah. Okay, and thank you all for watching the People's Podcast, and I see your comments, and I'm coming to them. Brother Minister, I have a question. When did you start to see the Most Honorable Louis Farrakhan in his divine light, to go from someone who was just a minister that you bumped into to see him in his, like, through the eyes of the scripture?
I started seeing him like that. We had a young sister in my city that was dying of a rare terminal illness, and I forget the name of it. And I had a chance to shake his hand after dinner when he had spoken Mas Mariam and all the student ministers, get a chance to go to his house.
Yes, sir.
And you get a chance to share words, and I mentioned to him she was ill. And he asked what would we like for him to do. I said, if you would just pray for her. You don't have to come. I believe if you pray for her, she'll be fine. And he said that I had big faith in him. He said, but Allah is the best knower. So he would pray for her. When the delegation and I made it back to Fort Wayne, she was in Raleigh Children's Hospital in Indianapolis in the Ronald McDonald House, which means you have rare cancer or rare a rare cancer or rare something, and they believe you're going to pass. So they put you and your parents up in the best living possible the last few days. So they did testing on her that Monday. And they called all of us to the room and they said, we found nothing. And we're standing there and I said, wait a minute. They said, all of what you had, there's no trace of it. And we all cried, telling Allahu Akbar. And she had white doctors, and he said, well, I don't know. I understand your belief in Islam, but if you saying that somebody prayed for her, whoever made that prayer, God, and that moment made me to know that that man made a prayer from his house in Chicago to a little girl that he did not know. God answered his prayer, and that girl went from not just getting better, she went in 24 hours from dying to not having a trace that it ever existed. At that moment, I said, okay, I said in my head, he's like Jesus Christ.
Yes, sir.
And
yes,
I felt I was wrong saying Christ, but being a Christian, he had been fulfilling certain scriptures of when the Roman soldier said, if you just pray for my daughter or my child at home, he'll be better. Well, I can testify that in just a prayer. He didn't know me. He didn't know me by name. He just knew me as one of the ministers in the line. But he went out of his way to pray for a little girl that he didn't know, and that little girl was healed. So from that moment on, I knew the minister was either Messiah or Christ. And I thought for a second, maybe God done deposited himself completely in this man.
Yes, sir.
That girl. From that moment on, I knew he was divine.
Praise be to Allah. Okay, excellent. And thank you all. I just want to read some of the comments. All praises be to Allah. Share Allahu Akbar. Another great show. Thank you, Sister Shantae. Praise be to Allah. Allahu Akbar. Okay, I just want a quick commercial break. Brother Minister, I want to just say that this is sponsored by a brother in St. Louis. This podcast episode, Supreme Men's Clothing, 10835 West Florissant Avenue, St. Louis, Missouri, 63136. Supreme Men's Clothing. The phone number is 314-528-5555. Also, Supreme Spring Water. There's a lot of Supremes because Muslims are sponsoring everything is Supreme. Supreme Spring Water. I want to also say street premiere video and editing production for my brother and his business partner Jamal. If you need some video production, let me know. My father, student minister Sharif, wrote a book and he told me to make sure I promote it. A Soldier in the Movement of Christ, Abdul Sharif Muhammad. It's a great book. I look forward to part 2. 1 second, Brother Jeffrey. My sister Miriam's You See I Love Me coloring book. It is on Amazon. Make sure you all get this. And last but not least, my second book, which is called Cleopatra, is a children's book, and it is on Amazon. If you all have a business that you would like me to sponsor or promote, J Imagination on Cash App, and I will promote it on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. Excellent. Thank you, Sister Rabia, for saying St. Louis. Okay, wonderful. Next, Brother Minister, my next question is, in your tenure in the nation, have you ever feared death or have maybe a death threat or a point where you had to overcome your fear? If so, how did you overcome it?
Well, I've been blessed. I've never had death threats.
Yes, sir.
In that sense. And I have to say I've never really been tried physically where I've been overcome by fear in that sense.
Yes, sir.
I have had my fears of many mistakes and errors that I have made in the nation, and I've had a fear of the wrath of God and God's punishment. But I've been blessed on the physical level that I have, as of yet, been tried physically to the point that I've had to recognize and deal with my own fear. I've been blessed with that so far. I haven't had to undergo that yet.
Praise be to Allah. Okay, my next question is, you have been hosting the drill competition for years. What is it about drill that you have a connection with, and how are you able to do so well as a host, sir?
You know, I have a great teacher. Minister Ishmael Muhammad is my minister, my mentor, and my coach. So, you know, we go over scenarios, we practice our spirit. I watch him at different events. So I kind of pattern many things after him. When I'm off stage, I'll ask him questions. How did this go? What's the best way to say that? But I say, number one, I always seek refuge in Allah. I start with a prayer.
Yes, sir.
I ask Allah to guide me by a way that I know not, and allow me to be pleasing to Him, and allow whatever I say to bring the people closer to Him, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, and the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. I don't have any talent. I just beg Him to use me as an instrument to elevate His cause, that it would be pleasing in those that have never seen Islam, and those that are on the fence, that it might give them a shot of adrenaline to keep on the journey. I can't take credit for any of that. I just always say that's 100% God, nothing from me.
Praise be to Allah. Okay, excellent. My next question to you is, what advice would you give to future fathers?
Whew. Have a job.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Number one, establish a personal relationship with Allah. Because as a father, you can't be a good father if you don't recognize the Father.
Yes, sir. Yes,
so
sir.
If you can submit yourself to God, then you can give godly advice to your child. Follow the way of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, who is a perfect father. Then you have the example of black manhood and black fatherhood. You have a mold and a die that's already been set and cast. If you walk in his footsteps, you'll be successful. You'll do the right things. You might not always feel that way, but if you walk in his steps, you're in a godly path. So if you can establish a relationship with God and listen to the minister, you'll be a good father.
Praise be to Allah.
And be patient, be patient, be patient, be patient.
Okay, wonderful. What advice would you give to future husbands?
I would start with the same, basically. First, have an understanding of who you are and to know where you're going. Because if you don't know who you are and you don't know what you want and you don't know where you're going, then you don't need a woman in your life.
Yes,
you
sir.
need to find a woman when you find your purpose, and you find, as the minister teaches us, you get a help you meet where you want to go, your goals, your obligations, and you can help her. But if you don't know yourself yet, you're not quite ready yet to be married.
Beautiful, and thank you for your transparency. I have just a few more questions, Brother Minister. My next question is, what has been your greatest trial in your tenure in the nation, and how did you overcome that?
Whew. My greatest trial has been trying to live up to the restrictive law, trying to submit myself to do Allah's will completely.
Yes, sir.
And I have failed at it, and there's times I've been successful. That has been the greatest trial, in having the right spirit in the times of failure to keep moving and not going backwards, and to try to anchor myself firmly in Allah and Allah alone, and to recognize and know that even in my errors and mistakes, He's still there and He still loves me. That has been my greatest trial.
Praise be to Allah. What has been your greatest joy in your tenure in the nation?
Oh, that's the easy one. Every time I see and hear the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, I have my greatest joy and my greatest experiences in the nation.
Okay, wonderful. We have just two more questions, sir, and thank you all for watching the People's Podcast. My next question is, how has your faith sustained you since 1990? You hear it all the way to now 2020. That's a long time. And what advice would you give to young people in the nation who want to be rooted and 10 toes down in their faith?
You have to learn to have a relationship with Allah privately. You have to have a personal relationship with Him. And it is when you can depend on Him and Him alone you will be able to go through and get through any trial. He has made me to know through many trials and errors, mistakes, and failures, that the only person that was there for me in my darkest times, it was him and him alone.
Yes,
the only person to get me through was him and him alone. He always reminds me in my trials not to rely on anyone else but him and him alone. So as young folk, get to know him and him alone before he forces you to get to know him.
Yes, sir.
So the Bible says every knee shall bow. I take it this way. You can do it on your own or you can be broke down.
Yes,
But
sir.
either way, it's going to make you to bow down to him. It's better to do it willingly than for him to force you.
Praise be
And
to
definitely less painful.
Okay, wonderful. My last question. Thank you, Sister Myra Muhammad, or Mira Muhammad says yes. She can bear witness to that. My last question to you, sir, is what would you like your legacy to be?
If to know that I love the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, I love the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, I love Master Fard Muhammad, I love black people, and I've tried to give my word and my life to the mission of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad.
Praise be to Allah. That's a wonderful legacy to have. And once again, I want to thank you for coming on the People's Podcast. And on behalf of my parents, my family, and those who are listening and watching, we thank you. We thank your children, and we thank your wife for your entire family for your sacrifice. And I've always admired you since I was younger. And to see you hosting the drill competition, and when I was hosting the workshop at Savior's Day, and I saw you in the audience, that meant so much to me. Because I said, okay, I hope I make Brother Jeffrey proud. You know what I'm saying? While I'm up here, I hope I'm doing okay.
You did well. You killed. I was impressed. I sat in the back. You killed that one. You did well.
Praise be to Allah. I was nervous, but I thank you. But I had a great example in you and how you host the drill competition and how you speak every on the webcast, and you just do a great job. It's nothing but love, and I thank you again for coming on the People's Podcast, Brother Minister.
It's been my honor, Brother Mill. I love you. Keep jamming, keep building, keep uplifting our people.
Yes, sir. All right. Assalamu alaikum. And thank you all for watching.